My sister asked for full custody of my son, then filed a 12-page co-parenting plan without my consent. That's when we called the lawyer. I am a man named Silas. I became a father for the first time. I assumed I knew the type of man I'd be when that happened. Protective, present, and possibly a touch overwhelmed. But I never expected my own family to pose the greatest threat to my son's safety. I grew up in a small town where everything revolves around image, where everyone knows everyone and nothing goes unnoticed. My parents have significant roots here. My father serves on nearly every neighborhood group you can think of, and my mother is the unofficial queen of church fundraisers and school activities. People around us regard them as respectful, generous, and kind. Behind closed doors, everything revolves around control and legacy. My older sister Sable is the oldest. She and her husband Brian had been trying for a baby for years. They tried every possibility, including numerous rounds of IVF, fertility specialists in the next city, and even a brief adoption inquiry that ended in heartbreak. Sable went into a downward spiral once they gave up trying. Every holiday became a grieving session for what she had lost. Every topic eventually came back to parenthood and how cruel life was to her. I never expected to have a baby anytime soon. Marin and I were still finding out life together. Nothing flashy, and no great plans. We were pleased. When she became pregnant we were surprised, but we knew we wanted to keep the baby. We made it work by moving in together, setting a budget, and making compromises. We were young parents, yes, but we were prepared. When we told my parents, their disappointment was clear. They did not yell or criticize us directly. They just expressed their disapproval by smiling too tightly, asking inquiries that sounded more like warnings, and repeatedly reiterating how things used to be done. We did not expect a parade, but we did hope for some warmth. Instead, it seemed like we had embarrassed them. However, after our son Kieran was born, things appeared to change. Initially, it was subtle. My mother delivered off meals, but always made a comment about Marin's tired appearance. Sable arrived with cartons of baby clothes, some still with price tags. She inquired about our nursery theme, which we had not yet considered, and began offering choices. Pinterest boards, color schemes, and diaper brands. It felt more like she was preparing for her own child than assisting with ours. Marin and I choked up with delight. We were fatigued from learning everything on the fly, and it was simple to accept help. But something seemed odd. Sable would hold Kieran for hours without releasing him. She'd say things to him like, "Mama Ratch is here," and then giggle like it was a ridiculous inside joke. Then she began showing up unannounced. I once caught her in our living room, holding Kieran, while Marin napped in the next room. She'd let herself in with a spare key she'd gotten from my parents when they used to own our house. We changed the locks after that. My parents, rather than condemning it, encouraged it. They volunteered to take Kieran for the weekend so we could rest. They phrased it as support, but Marin and I both noted how they stated it, as if they were attempting to establish something more permanent. Every time we declined, the mood darkened. My mother would mutter that we were being too protective. My father advised me to think long-term. Then came the supper, which made everything plain. It was intended to be a casual family lunch. Marin and I took Kieran, and we were about midway through when Sable held him up and stated, right in front of everyone, "He feels like the child I was meant to have." Nobody flinched. My mother reached out and grabbed her hand, as if she had spoken something daring. My father looked at me as if I was being unreasonable by not responding. I stared at Marin across the table. Her expression remained constant, but I knew she was finished. She did not speak for the remainder of the night. On my way out, my father stopped me. He told me Sable had been through so much, and that perhaps this was an opportunity for us to heal as a family. Perhaps this baby can be a benefit to more than just us. He used the word selfless. He discussed legacy and the importance of putting family first. That's when everything clicked. It wasn't just grief. This was not mistaken love. This was a planned effort that was subtle, deliberate, and disguised with civility and emotional remorse. But it was nonetheless a strategy. A scheme to take our son and alter his life story so that it made more sense to them than to us. A plan to give Sable the motherhood she had always desired, regardless of who brought the child into the world. And I realized then that nothing was off limits for them. No guilt, no manipulation, no blood. Marin and I sat quietly for a long time. Then she told me something I did not know. Sable had pulled her aside previously during one of her visits and begged for complete custody of the kid, not only to help raise him or babysit him. She claimed it would repair the family and tried to sound kind, as if we would still be in Kieran's life, but not as burdened parents. Marin had remained silent until now because she hoped it was a one-time lapse. But Sable had followed up twice. That was it. No more guesses. No more expecting they would stop on their own. We made 3 decisions that night. 1. Sable would never be alone with Kieran again. 2. There would be no more drop-ins. 3. Sable would not see Kieran unless both Marin and I were present, and this was planned in advance. I called my parents. I described everything calmly. I informed them that these were boundaries, not punishments. My mother did not listen. She claimed Marin was attempting to split us and break the family apart. She claimed it was all emotional manipulation. I told her that was not up for argument. We were Kieran's parents, and we had made this decision. She hung up mid-sentence. My father arrived at our apartment without contacting us first. Marin led Kieran into the bedroom as I stepped outside. He began with light chat, as if he were simply passing by, before rapidly transitioning to guilt. He discussed Sable's anguish, the years of futile treatments, and how difficult it had been for her. I let him finish, then told him again that this was not going to happen. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Sable deserved to be a mother more than I did to be a father." I did not answer. I walked in, locked the door and blocked his phone number. Then I informed Marin that we needed to start keeping track of everything, including messages, drop-ins and confrontations. This was no longer emotional. It was strategic. Sable entered without notice, having dialed a new number to reach the building buzzer. She carried a large box of baby clothes and toys, as if she were delivering something to a register. Marin was home alone with Kieran. Sable refused to leave, so Marin went outside to talk on the porch. Sable began crying, claiming Marin was selfish and cruel, and that this baby belonged to her. She even attempted to walk past Marin into the house. That's when I drove up. I had left work early since Marin was not answering the phone. Her hands were full. I stepped out, walked directly to the porch and stood between them. Sable asked if we could speak. I said no. I told her this wasn't normal and she should leave. She did not argue. She just remained there, crying, until Marin went inside and shut the door. Then she turned to leave. My parents invited us to their family supper. Marin did not want to go. She stated it felt like a setup. I told her I was going alone to keep the peace and she reluctantly agreed. I stepped into my parents' house and instantly noticed the presence of extra seats and extended family members I hadn't seen in months. Sable sat on the couch, teary-eyed, holding a framed portrait of Kieran. This was exactly what Marin had warned me of. As soon as dinner started, Sable stood up and began discussing how difficult it has been to see her future fade away. My mother sat next to her, nodding, and my father stared at me as if he expected me to say something heroic. One of my aunts touched Sable's hand and murmured, "Maybe there's still a way this can work out for everyone." I stood up. I informed them that Kieran was not a shared family asset. He was not a community project. He was our son. And what they were doing was not love. It was pressure, wrapped in sadness and given to us as a responsibility. I departed before dessert. When I arrived home, Marin had already packed a little overnight bag. She'd read my cousin's message about supper and didn't want to be home if someone showed up again. We only slept in a motel for one night, which gave us plenty of time to contemplate. We consulted a family attorney. We detailed everything that had transpired, including who had arrived, the texts, the comments, the visit to the cafe, and the emotional pressure. He listened, took notes, and told us we were making the proper move by pursuing legal action early. He instructed us to capture everything, not just texts and emails, but every call, unexpected visit, every conversation. He also made it plain. Legally, we were correct, but we needed to be prepared for further escalation. He elaborated. Families like this rarely back down cleanly when they think they're acting for the greater good. Marin and I agreed to keep touch to an absolute minimum. We stopped Sable. I saved my mother's phone number for now, just in case of an emergency. But Marin blocked all of her known phone numbers, emails, and social media accounts. We established a new, exclusive network of trusted contacts. We replaced our door locks again. From that moment forward, every decision we made would revolve around one thing: protecting Kieran. Not from strangers, but from those who professed to love him the most. The lawyer did not spend time. He explained exactly what needed to happen next. We were legally on firm ground, but we needed to document everything: texts, voicemails, unexpected visits, and even secondhand messages. More proof is better. He emphasized that if limits were consistently violated, we may consider a formal cease and desist order, or possibly a full no-contact order if things progressed. Marin received a message from an old college acquaintance she had not communicated with in over a year. The message was unexpectedly long, emotional, and clearly not written on her terms. It said things like, think of the sisterhood, and Sable deserves to be a mother too. Sable had contacted that friend. We instantly blocked her. I called her on a different number, briefly informed her that we knew she had relayed Sable's words, and cautioned her that anyone who played messenger would be removed from our lives without further notice. I then checked my inbox. There was an email from a new address that my mother had never used before. It was not simply a message. A PDF titled Co-Parenting Plan for Kieran included a whole document. Inside there were headers, bullet points, and a schedule breakdown. It also had sections for weekends with Sable, holiday rotation, and trial guardianship. My mother had written it as a business proposition. Her tone was professional and pleasant, but the message was clear. They still thought this was negotiable. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to our lawyer and stored it in the folder we now keep on a daily basis. The file was already rapidly increasing, with timestamps, screenshots, transcripts, and printed documents. It was no longer simply about family, it was a campaign. Marin's parents came over. They observed the luggage packed by the entrance, the stress in our routine, and how quietly we checked the windows every night. After dinner, her father approached me privately. He informed me they would help cover the costs if we opted to relocate. No inquiries, no conditions, simply get somewhere secure. Something else confirmed our suspicions. At work, my manager approached me in the hallway. He inquired carefully if everything was fine at home. Someone in town apparently expressed concern for Kieran's well-being. I questioned him directly about who had said that. He had no idea where it came from, but it prompted him to inquire. That was everything I needed. I met with human resources. I explained everything, left nothing out, and provided a brief written report for the record just in case. They pledged to flag any outside inquiries about me and alert me if anything untoward arrived. It was the first time I needed to involve my job, but it would not be the last. Sable confronted Marin again. Marin was alone at the small cafe she frequents near our apartment. Sable approached without notice and attempted to sit with her. Marin didn't participate. She left her coffee on the table and walked away. When she arrived home, she didn't say anything. She simply handed me the scarf she had dropped in the rush and closed the bedroom door behind her. Our lawyer issued Sable a formal no-contact warning. It was written and given by his office. The guidelines were straightforward. No texts, no phone calls, no third-party communication, and no physical approach. If she violated any of it, we would take additional legal action. That warning was also added to our growing dossier, with a copy delivered to Marin's cafe in case Sable returned. We took action. Marin and I both changed our telephone numbers. We compiled a list of critical contacts whom we completely trusted and only shared our new phone numbers with them. Everyone else was barred out. Family members who had not spoken up were excluded. Friends who had been neutral were eliminated. We weren't taking chances anymore. I quietly inquired about new rents. Something outside of town, far enough away that we wouldn't run into anyone from our existing lives. Marin's parents helped us narrow down our options. We visited one under a different identity, with a temporary email address and a cash deposit. We provided no forwarding address. Nobody in our family was told. Marin packaged up Kieran's belongings. I took time off work without explaining why. We started making plans to move secretly. No social media updates or announcements. We even switched off location sharing on our smartphones. The less people knew, the better. Because after everything, emails disguised as contracts, third parties appearing at cafes, and lies uttered to my employer, one thing was certain. This was never going to end on its own. If we desired peace, we had to accept it. Nobody was going to give it to us. We completed the lease on a tiny rental house 2 towns away. It was a secluded neighborhood on a dead-end street, with no pedestrians and no neighbors who knew us. We paid the deposit in cash using a temporary email address, planned the move on a weekday, and booked the moving company under a new name. We carefully packed things, taking only what we needed. Everything else was either donated or left behind. No goodbyes, no notices, and no social media. The lawyer sent Sable a formal cease and desist letter the same morning we signed the new lease. It was written directly. Any future contact, in person or through third parties, would be considered harassment and dealt with legally. A certified copy was mailed to her address. Another visited her office. Our lawyer warned us to expect pushback, and he was correct. I got an email from Brian, Sable's husband. He wrote as if he was attempting to mediate and asked if we might reach a peaceful resolution. I didn't respond. I emailed it to our lawyer, who documented it and included Brian's name in the no-contact restrictions. No contact meant no contact from either party. Brian's email address was reported and blocked. That marked the end of it. My mother appeared outside of my workplace building. She stood near the parking lot and started calling my name loudly and frequently. She had never visited my office before. I walked back inside and went straight to human resources. Security cameras had already captured her. HR changed the internal security policy promptly. My file now included a restricted access disclaimer stating that no family members could visit the site without written notification and approval. Marin received an unexpected floral delivery. There was no card, just a short letter inside that said, "You stole what should have been mine." She did not touch the flowers. We photographed everything, including the box, letter, and timestamp, and then called the police. An officer responded, made a report, and marked it as a potential threat. We forwarded a scanned copy of the report to our lawyer. He added it to the growing file. That evening I installed new security cameras. Every door and window is motion activated, linked to cloud storage, and has 24/7 backup. I granted our lawyer remote access to the channel and footage. We were not waiting for anything to happen. We were going to be prepared before anything happened. Meanwhile, a friend provided screenshots from Sable's friends, which contained vague, indirect accusations about unworthy parents and selfish decisions that harmed innocent people. They didn't name us, but they didn't need to. The terminology was direct, and the timing was clear. I took screenshots, dates, usernames, captions, and everything was recorded. One of my aunts, who had previously avoided the situation, contacted me discreetly. She apologized for not saying something sooner. She had been watching from the sidelines, hoping it would blow over, but now she was hearing things that worried her. Sable had told several relatives that she had been robbed of her child, saying she had been offered guardianship, despite the fact that no such discussion had ever occurred and we had changed our minds after promising her guardianship. None of this was true. My aunt sent screenshots from a family group conversation. My folks were in it. They were openly labeling me unstable and depicting Marin as manipulative. That was the final straw. Marin and I ceased talking with anyone other than our lawyer and two trusted friends. We updated our emergency contacts. We changed all mailing addresses to a private mailbox in a different town. Kieran's pediatrician was also relocated to one near our new home. No forwarding address, no record sharing. The police arrived at our door. This was a welfare check. The officer stood on the doorstep, calm but forceful, explaining that someone had reported us missing and that Kieran could be in danger. Marin held Kieran while I gave the officer all of our evidence regarding the cease and desist order, including the police report from the flower note, our lawyer's legal file and security footage from the previous 2 days. The officer asked for identification and then walked through the house. He spoke to Marin separately before speaking to me. He confirmed that the report came from my parents. They informed the police that we had vanished and that Kieran might not be safe. Before leaving, the officer urged us to file for a formal restraining order. He described the pattern as apparent, intensifying, personal, and relentless. He gave me a card with a case number and suggested we follow up at the local station. He also marked our address as a known problem, implying that any subsequent reports would be treated differently. I closed and shut the door behind him. We were no longer merely protecting our home. We were creating the case piece by piece. Marin and I met with our lawyer and filed a protective order against Sable, my mother, and my father. We brought everything, including copies of the police reports, screenshots, camera footage, timestamps, emails, the stop and desist letter, and the flower message. The lawyer presented it all in one harassing filing. It was around 2 inches thick. He suggested we start keeping a printed, timestamped timeline to keep things organized. We added additional entries to the file every day, linking them to evidence images, messages, recordings, and anything else that could be traced. Another legal document has arrived. This time it's from my father's attorney. It was a claim for grandparents' visitation rights. They had submitted a request to the court, claiming that they had a deep relationship with Kieran and deserved regular access. Our lawyer immediately filed an objection, including a detailed report indicating that my parents had never cared for Kieran. Not overnight, not while ill, and not during our working hours. All past interaction had been limited, and recent contact had been classified as hazardous. The objection was approved without a hearing. The claim was refused. A delivery arrived at our front door. It contained no return address. Inside there was a little stuffed teddy bear. Marin saw something unusual about it immediately away. The eyes appeared particularly shiny. She put it up to the light, revealing a tiny blinking red dot behind one of the plastic pupils. We did not touch it after that. We put it in a sealed plastic bag and contacted the police. Officers arrived and confirmed Marin's suspicions. It included a hidden camera. They accepted it as proof and amended our file. This was the most dangerous escalation yet. If the behavior continued, our lawyer began preparing for an emergency hearing request. I got a message from one of my relatives. He'd never gotten engaged, commented or sought out before, but this time he did. He said he had something we needed to see and provided us screenshots of a group chat where Sable was conversing with several common pals. In the messages, she instructed them on how to represent Marin as emotionally unstable, how to discreetly note troubling behavior, and how to infer neglect without making direct allegations. It wasn't all gossip, it was a planned smear campaign. Our lawyer started writing a slander action. We hadn't filed it yet, but whenever something was said publicly or reiterated to authorities, it would be lodged. The screenshots sent from my cousin's phone were included in the file. We also modified every aspect of our lives to remove our family's access. Kieran's new pediatrician was notified about the incident. His medical records were altered to omit any names associated with my parents or Sable. Marin's parents and our two closest friends were the only emergency contacts, with no exceptions. We double-checked daycare enrollment and changed the contact forms there as well. Marin went through her own contact list, removing any mutual acquaintances who had ignored our boundaries or forwarded harmless messages from Sable. Anyone who provided even a single warning sign was cut off. Marin went to get a few items from a store near our new home. She called me as soon as she returned, calm but alert. While walking through the parking lot, she saw that someone was following her. When she turned to look, there was my mother. She did not speak. She simply stood there, half hidden behind a car before departing. When Marin started recording, she raised her phone. My mother immediately turned and went away, not saying anything. We submitted the video. It has been put to the protective order file. This was the third direct appearance after receiving a written legal warning. I went to our leasing office and asked that our lease be amended to reflect our address as secret in all public and government-accessible property records. They instantly processed the adjustment. Going forward, even postal records would reveal that our information was restricted. No new contact arrived. Kieran had his first appointment with his new pediatrician. The doctor conducted a thorough examination and determined that Kieran was healthy, well-fed, clean, and had a deep emotional tie to his parents. There were no worries. We asked the doctor to retain the visit notes on file in case they were needed for court documents. He agreed. We finally took a break after weeks of staying on high alert. Marin's parents agreed to take care of the house. We drove out to a peaceful cabin with no cell connection, internet, or interruptions. It was only Marin, Kieran, and me. We brought literature, food, and a second-hand instant camera. It was the first time in months that we had no warnings, knocks, weird deliveries, unexpected cars, or reports to submit. We did not discuss court dates, lawyers, or family. For a while, it was simply silence, trees, and breathing space. We knew it wasn't finished, but for once, it had stopped. We returned to find a white envelope fastened to our front door. Inside was a genuine court summons. Sable had sought full custody of Kieran. The documents were thick, imprinted, and serious. She claimed we emotionally exploited her and promised her the baby during her pregnancy. She labeled it a betrayal. She accused Marin of isolating me and claimed that I was too emotionally vulnerable to make parenting decisions. Her appeal alleged that Marin was dominating and that pressure from her had harmed my mental health. Our lawyer went over everything thoroughly. Sable had included letters from family members who had no genuine involvement with Kieran. A relative from another state stated that Sable had always wanted to be a mother and was being robbed. Marin's second cousin wrote that she was emotionally locked off. They had never seen us together in person. Our lawyer immediately started writing a counterclaim. We provided Marin's therapy records, pediatrician reports and police files, as well as the cease and desist documents, the hidden camera incident, the daycare incident, and each occurrence with names, dates, images, and legal follow-up. We established a complete paper trail indicating that Sable had never been promised custody, either legally or verbally, and that every step we took was motivated by her continued harassment. I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Sable's former therapist. She was no longer treating Sable, but she agreed to submit a confidential statement expressing concern about her obsessive behavior and citing previous patterns that matched what we were seeing. That letter was signed, sealed, and delivered directly to the judge's office by our legal team. The court has scheduled a preliminary hearing. A gag order was obtained immediately. Both sides were forbidden from discussing the issue online or with extended relatives. No social media references, no imprecise remarks, and no messaging through third parties. Any breach may result in punishment. Marin and I combed through every account we had, including Facebook, email, photo applications, and cloud backups. We eliminated all baby-related photos, removed any public references to our location, and enabled two-factor authentication. All friends and extended family members were deleted from follower lists unless they were on our legal clearance list. Any new follower requests were ignored. The daycare called. One of the staff members informed me that my mother had arrived at the front desk. She informed them that she was registered as Kieran's guardian and will be there to fetch him up. She even carried an old photograph of herself with him. When they asked for ID and emergency contact information, she became agitated. The director contacted the police. By the time I arrived, authorities had already begun speaking with the daycare team. My mother had left, but not without causing a scene. The police obtained witness testimony and issued a formal trespass order against her. She was now permanently prohibited from the facility. Our lawyer received the report, which included the names of the witnesses. That incident alone was sufficient to support our protection order request. One of my aunts called to softly alert us. Sable had been quietly telling people for years that if she couldn't have a child, she wanted to raise mine. She explained that she was always supposed to be Kieran's mother. She had allegedly presented it as a promise, telling others that I had thought about it and that we were still thinking out how to move forward. None of it was true, but it explained why so many relatives believed her account of events. I printed out emails from the week Kieran was born, messages in which I shared infant images, hospital updates, and even a receipt for a birth certificate naming Marin and me as parents. We filed them together with our signed parental plan, a notarized document from early in the pregnancy that outlined our obligations, insurance coverage, and medical decision-making roles. Marin began working part-time from home again. We agreed on a new schedule, hers in the mornings, mine in the evenings, with the rotation always based on when Kieran needed attention. We shared a secured disk with our lawyer to facilitate document access. I upgraded our security system again, this time adding remote access, motion alarms, and encrypted backup. I also purchased a fireproof safe. Inside I kept 2 copies of every court document, police report, email exchange, and legal contract. One in print, and one on a drive. Our lawyer studied Sable's filing and provided a detailed response. It depended on emotion rather than evidence. No contracts, no written guarantees, and no guardianship papers. Just feelings, pressure, and a story based on pity. The judge scheduled the entire custody hearing. Everything from this point on would be resolved in court. No more texts, front yard visits, flowers, notes, or phony pickups. It was official now, and we were prepared. The pre-trial hearing occurred on a Tuesday morning. Marin and I arrived early with our lawyer and an entire binder of proof. The courtroom was quiet, with only a few people present. Sable sat on the other side with her legal team, and my parents stood behind her, silent. After analyzing the timeline, the judge issued a temporary restraining order against Sable, my mother, and my father. It would remain in effect until the final custody decision. They were barred from approaching us or contacting us directly or through anybody else. The judge also reinstated the gag order. No one was permitted to discuss the subject, either publicly or privately, including friends, neighbors, or online posts. No more backdoor attempts to contact us or persuade others. Back at home I have a new intercom system installed. It included a built-in video feed and cloud recording. I installed a backup disk and connected it to a concealed router. The tape was encrypted and transmitted in real time to our lawyer and a secure contact at the local police station. Nobody could show up without being documented. We received a call from a court-appointed child welfare professional. She planned a series of surprise house visits to analyze Kieran's living conditions, emotional development, and parenting habits. We were instructed not to demand an exact schedule in order to live our lives regularly. The specialist walked through each room, took notes, spoke to both of us separately, and observed Kieran's interactions with his toys and routine. She saw breakfast, nap prep, and playtime. She inquired thoroughly about sleep schedules, developmental milestones, and emotional attachment. Following the final interview, she filed an official report with the court. There were no worries. She described Kieran as happy, safe, and thriving. His emotional bond with his parents was described as strong and visibly healthy. Sable's legal team attempted to postpone the trial again. They submitted a motion requesting extra time to collect emotional evidence, whatever that meant. The judge denied it on the spot. The documentation previously submitted was thorough. The court found no reason to stall. Our lawyer presented a psychiatric report from 5 years ago, an old evaluation of Sable related to her infertility support sessions. The records, obtained lawfully thanks to her old therapist's cooperation, revealed long-term trauma responses, profound sorrow spirals, and mental instability. The documents did not portray her as malevolent, but they did reveal that she was ill and that her pain had influenced her behavior. My department chief called me. They offered me a permanent remote role. I agreed immediately. It meant I could stay at home, help Marin, and keep track of things without missing work. We modified our schedules so that we could both be present for the majority of Kieran's day. A cousin I hadn't communicated with in years contacted me. He was not involved in any of the turmoil, but had been mistakenly joined to a private message group. In that group, Sable had written that Marin was about to give up parenting. She stated Marin had mentally checked out, and I was in over my head. She was still promoting the story that Kieran belonged to her. The screenshots were time-stamped and given to our lawyer as further proof for the file. Our landlord has contacted me. Someone purporting to be from Child Protective Services had stopped by and requested admission to our apartment unit. The landlord seemed suspicious. When questioned, the individual lacked a badge, refused to provide a full name, and swiftly fled. Before departing, the landlord took a photo using his phone. The individual was one of Sable's closest pals. We filed a complaint with the local authorities. The landlord agreed to testify in court if necessary. Marin began therapy again and was formally diagnosed with situational anxiety. After several sessions, her therapist wrote a professional statement explaining the effects of the continuous pressure and stalking on her health. It was more than just emotional. It was physical, with sleep disturbances, gastric problems and panic attacks. The letter was introduced to the court documents to demonstrate the psychological impact of the circumstance on Kieran's primary caregiver. We were also required to provide personal statements. Marin and I each created thorough timelines from the pregnancy to the present, outlining each episode and its implications. We documented the financial costs, emotional breakdowns, and familial losses. Marin's message centered on her responsibility as a mother and the fear she has felt every day since Sable began inserting herself. Mine concentrated on my own family's treachery, refusal to accept boundaries, ambushes, rumors, and lies. We concluded our speeches in the same way, with one simple request, that Kieran be allowed to grow up free of the burden of someone else's plight. That his home remains quiet, stable, and safe. That love is characterized by protection rather than possession. A final hearing was set. Everything was ready. The complete custody hearing started in the morning. Marin and I sat opposite our lawyer, both motionless, while the courtroom steadily filled. Sable arrived with her legal team. My parents sat behind her. The air felt frigid but controlled. The judge entered and began immediately. Our lawyer spoke first. He guided the court through a systematic timeline that included everything from when Sable initially approached Marin about stealing the infant to the most recent police records and restraining orders. Every item was documented, including texts, emails, voicemails, screenshots, witness statements, police files, package images, therapist evaluations, and 2 house assessments by a child welfare officer. Everything was laid forth in a logical order and supported by facts. Sable's crew followed. They depended heavily on emotion. They portrayed Sable as a woman heartbroken by infertility, betrayed by a younger brother who had taken her only chance to become a mother. They depicted Marin as a cold and dominating individual who severed a loving sister's ties with her nephew. They called it tragic. They used the word cruel. Then my parents took the stand. My mother claimed I was unstable and had always struggled with responsibilities. My father said Marin manipulated me into abandoning the family. Neither supplied dates or verification, only anecdotes and opinions. The court interjected repeatedly, asking for specific examples of damage or negligence. There were none. Every response came back to emotion and expectation, not fact. When Sable was cross-examined, she admitted to referring to Kieran as her son during a private chat. She attempted to explain it away as grief and loss. Our lawyer played a taped call adjacent to a chat between Sable and a friend in which Sable described her plan to step in when they crash and burn and get what should have been mine. The room fell silent. The childcare manager was next. She detailed the day Sable showed up unexpectedly and attempted to update Kieran's emergency contact information, claiming to be his legal guardian. The management refused, requested documents, and informed the police. She stated how Sable's conduct resulted in a formal trespass order and a permanent ban from the facility. The judge took notes. He asked the daycare manager if she had ever noticed any symptoms of neglect or instability in Marin or myself. She replied, no. Then arrived a co-worker from my department who had never met Marin. He testified about my workplace behavior, stress management, and how I discussed parenting. He referred to me as patient, constant, and attentive. His testimony was not emotional. It was practical and consistent. The court-appointed child welfare officer delivered her final report. She described our home as solid and secure. She noticed Kieran's strong bond to both parents, his emotional development, and how Marin and I divided tasks. She informed the court that no changes in custody were proposed. Her voice did not waver. My therapist wrote a note verifying that I had no history of instability or hostility, and that I had maintained emotional control throughout the process, despite continual harassment. Marin's medical records had been checked previously. Sable's squad attempted one final approach. They took out the baby clothes and nursery items that Sable had given them in the early months. They believed it was a financial investment and an early indication of parental desire. The court dismissed the case on the spot. He stated that giving presents did not create a parenting agreement and advised the legal team not to use emotional gestures as legal proof. Our lawyer delivered his concluding speech. He emphasized boundaries, safety, and precedence. He stated that the court needed to consider whether obsession, desperation, and entitlement could trump parental rights and documented safety. He urged the court to preserve a child's right to stability from extended family conflict. The court ordered a brief recess. When he reappeared, the courtroom remained hushed. He ruled in our favor. I and Marin retained full legal and physical custody of Kieran. Sable was denied any visitation. My parents were also forbidden from communicating. The judge made it clear that any future attempts to meddle, directly or indirectly, will result in criminal charges and prompt legal action. He directed that all third-party communications, smear attempts, and indirect contact be discontinued forever. Any infraction would result in enforcement without additional hearings. He did not conclude the ruling with feeling. He ended with the word, law. Sable appeared stunned. My mother moved her head away. My father simply sat motionless. The judge's closing statement was brief. This child deserves serenity, not pressure. This case is closed. We obtained the formal verdict in writing. Marin and I were awarded full and permanent custody of Kieran. The judge also granted a permanent restraining order against Sable, my mother and father. The decision outlined everything in detail. No visits, no communication, no third-party communications, and no physical presence near our house, daycare, or business. In the written decision, the judge included a requirement. Sable was barred from filing any future custody appeals unless she underwent formal psychological therapy and received clearance from a licensed mental health expert approved by the court. Without it, her case would not be considered. My father had breached the restraining order. He sent an email to my work address. It was short on making things right. I didn't open it completely. I submitted it to our lawyer, who immediately contacted the authorities. A warrant was issued for violating the court order. He was detained and released on conditional bail. The court imposed stringent no-contact orders again. One more violation and the next arrest would result in automatic jail time. We did not hear from him after that. Marin and I began the legal process of changing Kieran's last name. We wanted a clean split from the family members who sought to regard him as a consolation reward. Our lawyer filed the petition, and we obtained the relevant documents. We added it to a new binder we had created called the Legacy folder. The folder included more than simply legal papers. We included letters, photographs, receipts, and handwritten notes. A copy of the judge's decision. A letter from the pediatrician. A printed snapshot of Sable's friend's message about taking back what's hers. One day when Kieran is old enough, we will give him the folder. We'll let him see for himself why we fought and won. I got a promotion at work. It included a raise and confirmed my permanent remote position. We utilized the extra money to carry out a long-planned move to a little coastal town Marin had always wanted to live in. We chose a one-story house with a fenced yard that was within walking distance of the beach. We did not notify anyone outside of our trusted circle. Marin continued her therapy. Her sessions became less frequent, and her therapist stated that her progress was obvious. She began helping with a local organization that helps new mothers cope with toxic familial pressure. She never spoke about our experience publicly, but she understood just what to say to women on the verge of burnout. I joined a peer support group for men dealing with custody difficulties and family meddling. I did not use my complete name. I told our narrative, the steps we followed, and the tools that worked. A couple men messaged me personally after meetings, thanking me for being direct and clear. They were not searching for impassioned speeches. They were searching for travel maps. According to a relative, Sable sold her home and moved out of state. My aunt texted me a quick note informing me that Sable had willingly attended a long-term mental health program in another city. She is still receiving treatment. But according to my aunt, she still considered herself as a victim. She had not apologized, contacted out, or acknowledged the court's decision. Word of the case spread among the extended family. A cousin distributed copies of the verdict to a few relatives who had initially supported Sable. People quietly began to back away from my parents. I heard some people had blocked their numbers. Some even cut off touch totally. There are no dramatic announcements. Just silence. Kieran turned 1. We didn't throw a large party, just the 3 of us. Marin made a tiny cake, which we let Kieran demolish with both hands in the center of the living room. We took some shots for ourselves. No social media, no family invitations, and no presents from strangers. Just balloons, music, and silence. Later that night, after Kieran had fallen asleep, I opened an old notebook and scribbled one more entry. Not for court, not for evidence. This is just for me. I mentioned that peace does not always arrive with reconciliation. Sometimes it appears to be distant. Sometimes it appears that limits are being maintained firm. Sometimes it is simply the lack of chaos. I wrote that giving things up does not indicate love. It's demonstrated by standing guard. No parent should be expected to give up their child to keep someone else's fantasy alive. We walked to the beach the next morning. Marin held Kieran's hand to one side. I clutched the other. He took short, awkward steps through the sand. The wind was mild. The waves were silent.